Good afternoon, everyone. Today, I'm going to present my work on hydrophobic interaction chromatography, or HIC, for characterization of therapeutic proteins using native mass spec. Sorry. My talk will focus on the following area. First, I will give a brief introduction for the background and the motivation why we are doing this work. And then I will give more details on the method development and a couple case studies. And then I finish the talk with a conclusion. So let's take a look on the current HIC-MS methods for protein structural characterization. Most frequently, we use the reverse phase that look at the primary protein structure characterization, and then we use HIC for glycan profiling. And both IEX and SCIEX method are currently well established. One where IEX using for charge variant studies and SEC using for size variant studies. Using HIC-MS, we can look at the protein conformational states, folding, and protein-protein interactions. However, due to the nature of the HIC method that we have to use the high cell concentration of the mobile phase, which are incompatible with the MS detection. So the first HIC-MS online method was published from University of Wisconsin, 2018, and by Yinggu's lab, that he proved the concept that HIC-MS actually works. However, there's a limitation of this method. The study was using a custom capillary column, and then the elution with high % organic solvents. So no HIC-MS method has been reported yet under the conventional approach. So let's take a look how HIC works. Hydrophobic interaction chromatography is based on the interaction between the surface hydrophobicity of the protein, the water molecule, and then the HIC ligand. Also, the surface of the mobile phase concentration. When the cell concentration of the mobile phase is high, and enhance the binding between the protein and the HIC ligand. And when decrease the cell concentration of the mobile phase and weaken the binding between the protein and the HIC ligand, so the protein will elute out from column. So why we are doing this work, why we develop this online HIC-MS method? So during the early stage of the hydrophobic screening, that we observe multiple pieces on one of the antibody that we were very curious. So what those are they the conformational isomers or the PDMs? Because we know either the conformational isomers or the PDM can affect the therapeutic outcomes because they might have the different bioactivities. So how can we overcome the challenge to develop this HIC-MS method, the MS-friendly method? First, we have to choose MS-friendly salt, which is the ammonium acetate that we use as a mobile phase, and then depends on the hydrophobicity of the protein, and then we choose a phenyl column as the binding ligand, and we optimize the mobile phase gradient that have the cell concentration is more compatible with the MS detection. And then more importantly, we choose a MS system that have ionization source. It can be it can provide efficient desolvation, because that is very important for if you actually get a good mass spec data or not. So the reason we choose this ionization source is the design of this turbo V ionization source. It can enhance the gas flow dynamic and also can optimize the heat configuration. So the instrumentation setup is very simple. So we use a high flow UHPLC system directly coupling with the X500B QTOF system, and then use the SCIEX XQS software as for data acquisition. Before going into the mass spec data, and then let's take a look on the mass method compatibility between the conventional salt and the MS-friendly salt here. So the left-hand side is I use the conventional salt, which is the ammonium sulfate, and then and the right-hand side I use ammonium acetate. So they both show a similar pattern. However, when you use ammonium sulfate, it shows a slightly better resolution, because the salt that I use is much higher on the conventional HIC. So, and if you observe that, so you can also see the P1 and the P2 ratio is a little bit different under the ammonium sulfate and then under the ammonium acetate, because we do know the protein like to stay in the most the protein like to stay in the most stable form. So when you change the solvent environment, and the protein establishes the equilibrium, so to stay in the most stable form. So we test the method, see how well it will use a well-behaved antibody. So what I mean well-behaved is a very pure drug substance, and then to test how well these MS method work. So on the right-hand side, the upper panel, the right-hand side, it shows the average spectra obtained from QTOF system. It demonstrates a low charge state envelopes that falls into the range between 4,500 to 6,500, between 4,500 to 6,500, which is the characteristic of native MS spectra for antibodies that I saw from the previous studies. And the bottom two panels shows the expanded view of the charge state 29 and also the deconvoluted spectra. Both reveals the heterogeneity of the glycosylation forms from the G0F to G2F. So as I mentioned earlier, we observed free piece from one of the antibody. So we try to look at it. So using the mass spec to look at all these free pieces in a native form, and then based on the mass spec data, we can tell that those free pieces shows us all the identical mass. So in protein native form, and the protein fold as a global, and then with the hydrophilic inside and with the hydrophilic outside and the hydrophobic residues inside. So if the conformation change, and then the sulfate hydrophobicity will change as well, that's why it results in a fully different form. So with assistance with the mass spec, and then we will be able to identify of them, they confirm they are the conformational isomers. So the beauty of this method is we can extend the study to using hydrogen deuterium exchange to look at the protein architecture of this protein, and to look to see the folding states of each conformational isomers. So that's another free piece scenario we observed from another antibody. So, however, this free piece scenario is different from the previous one, and then the previous one shows the conformation change for the P1 and the P2, the ratio change. So, but however, for this one, the ratio is fixed. So we wanted to know what are those free pieces are as well. So with assistance of the mass spec, we identify this free piece in a native form, and then we observe a positive mass shift from P2 and P1 and above 2 to 3 Dalton. So one of the possible explanations for these two peaks are probably the free files. Why I finished the free files? So let's look at the MD simulation of the antibody IgG1. So the non-circle one are the intra-disulfide bonds. They all bury inside. So if the disulfide bond open, the intra-disulfide bond open, and then usually it won't cause the conformational change. The ones that I showed you, one is the intra-disulfide bonds. That 2 is the heavy chain and the light chain, and the other 2 is the hinge region. So those 4 disulfide bonds are more solvent exposed. So if partial reduction of these disulfide bonds, it will increase the flexibility of the hinge region, so it will cause the conformational change. So we are working on the orthogonal method to confirm this, see if they are actually free file cause the conformational change. So enough for antibody. Let's look. We also wanted to test how well this method works on a conjugated protein. So as we know, hydrophobic interaction is a primary technique that we use for purification and analytical techniques for ADC and conjugated proteins. So we apply this method using a conjugated protein we have in-house. And then this method was be able to resolve both the unconjugated form and the conjugated form and directly analyze with using the mass spec in a native form. So potentially this method can apply to measure the extent of the conjugations. To summarize this work, so an online HIC-MS method was developed to identify the species that we observe in a conventional HIC method. And the separation profile on both methods are similar. The X500MS system with the turbo resource provide a high efficient desolvation and then lead to a high quality MS spectra. And the conformational isomers was be able to identify directly using the HIC-MS method, and then the conjugation protein was well resolved using the HIC-MS method and is identified in a native form as well. So potentially this method can use to measure the extent of the conjugations. So with that, I would like to thank the team that worked on this, and then from the BMS Biological Development Devon side, thanks for their scientific input and the support, and also the SCIEX folks, and thank you for their scientific input as well and their instrument as well. Thank you very much.